You know that one person who broke your heart so badly, you swore you'd move on and never look back? Well, I did move on. I built a life, a career, and a version of myself I'm truly proud of. But then 20 years later, he showed up in the audience at one of my lectures. And let me tell you, he didn't recognize the woman standing on that stage. But I remembered him. Oh, I remembered everything. The lies, the cheating, the weight comment, the underage girlfriend, the endangered animals, the ruined career. This isn't just the story of heartbreak. It's the story of calculated, poetic, and deeply earned revenge served cold with receipts. So buckle up, because it starts in the 90s with a guy named Jake and ends with a kind of justice that's so satisfying you'll want to replay it twice. Back in college, I met Jake. He was 23, recently graduated, and getting ready to move across the country for grad school. By pure coincidence, or maybe Fei Tai was also preparing to move 3,000 miles away to a place just 90 minutes from where he'd be. We hit it off fast, shared the same dry humor, loved animals, had mutual friends. He had 2 sisters and a younger brother, and I got close with all of them. Everything felt ... right. Even though money was tight, we made it work. We had taco dates, movie nights, and most weekends I drove out to see him. Jake was doing a PhD in animal sciences. He bred and sold small animals out of the house he rented with 2 other roommates. I didn't mind it, was kind of charming. Honestly, it all felt like the chaotic, messy, exciting kind of love you only get when you're young. There was even this woman named Mary, mid-50s. Sharp, kind, worked in university admin. She was the wife of Jake's advisor, and we'd often have lunch together when I visited. Mary became like a mentor, almost an aunt. It felt like I was building a real future with this man. Then, one night, 2 years in, we're lying in bed, mid-conversation, half-dressed. He turns to me and says, "I'm just concerned. You've been gaining weight, and it's making it harder for me to be attracted to you." No concern about my health. No love in his voice. It's just cold judgment. Mind you, I've gained maybe 10 pounds. Still fit, still wearing the same clothes. Still me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat up and said, "Well, then maybe next time I visit, you can offer something better than crackers and cheese for dinner." Because even at 23, I knew this wasn't about me. It was about him. I asked, calmly, "So what's your solution to this?" He blinked at me. "I guess you should lose weight." I stood up, got dressed, and said, "Nah, I'm not doing that." "So what are you going to do?" He didn't have an answer. I slept there, left the next morning like usual. But something inside me had shifted. The man I trusted had just shown me who he really was. 3 months later, he calls. Says he wants to break up. Why? "You don't know enough about science," he says. Excuse me? Apparently, I wasn't academic enough. He didn't want to keep having to explain animal terms in common English instead of Latin names. I told him that was the dumbest excuse I'd ever heard. He insisted it was the real reason, but I knew there was more. When he came by a month later to return my stuff, I pressed him again. "Tell me the truth." That's when it came out. "I've been seeing someone. One of my students. Her name's Meg. She was 19. He was her TA. And we had still been together when it started." I screamed. My roommate threatened to toss him off our balcony. He finally left, and as soon as the door closed, started to laugh. Because I remembered something. At a BBQ, Meg had once spilled a drink on her pants. Jake had asked me if I had any sweatpants she could borrow. I didn't, because I was a size 8 and she was a size 18. Suddenly, his weird comment about my weight made sense. He didn't want me to break up because I gained a little. He wanted me to break up because he was a coward. He's too scared to own up to what he was doing behind my back. Well, if he wanted drama, he was about to get a story he'd never forget. "Hey, we broke up. Thanks for being." After the breakup, I took a few days to breathe. And then I decided to email Jake's roommates. It was the early 2000s, so email was the polite way to say, "Hey, we broke up. Thanks for being good friends. I appreciated you both." But what? They wrote back, "Oh, that was gold." Turns out they knew about Meg. They had begged Jake to tell me, or else they were going to do it themselves. He broke up with me the same day they gave him that ultimatum. One of the roommates, George, super sweet guy, honestly reached out again. He offered to help me pick up a few of my things from the house. Said Jake wouldn't be there that weekend. And then he said the magic words, "Come up for the weekend. We'll go out, drink, have fun." All the things Jake never wanted to waste money on. That was the first flicker of revenge. When I arrived, George let me in. Jake's room was still a mess of animal cages, tanks, and exotic pets. That's when I noticed something off. There was one animal I recognized immediately, a species that was illegal to own in our state. Jake wasn't just a cheater. It was a walking wildlife violation, and it hit me. I might not have a PhD, but I paid attention. He had another animal endangered that he took in from a rescue organization. But he hadn't submitted the paperwork or paid the $25 fee required by law. Said he didn't want the government in his business. Well, now the government was about to be very much in his business. I took photos of everything: the endangered species, the unlicensed breeding, setup, the illegal animal tank placed right next to a window, visible from the street. Let me just say, my digital camera was doing the Lord's work that weekend. Later that night, George and I went out drinking. Hard. We danced, laughed, and made sure to tell everyone in Jake's academic circle exactly why we were celebrating. Oh, you haven't heard? Jake was sleeping with his 19-year-old student, got caught. Total mess. People talked fast. And in a tight-knit grad program like his, word spreads faster than wildfire. When we came back home, Jake and Meg were watching TV in the living room. Perfect. I was in a short dress, clearly tipsy. George practically carried me in, smiling ear to ear. We disappeared into his bedroom. Now let me be clear, George was a gentleman. But we made sure to put on a show. Loud laughter, whispers, the occasional moan. The sound of him walking past the hallway in just his boxers. We wanted Meg and Jake to hear every bit of it. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen wearing the same wrinkled dress from the night before. Makeup smudged, hair a mess, donut in hand. Jake glared at me and snapped, "You don't have to act like a whore in front of me." I took a bite of my donut, smiled slowly, and said, "Have fun with my leftovers." Then George kissed me on the head like a proud co-conspirator. Meg, she looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Now, the fake hookup was satisfying, sure, but it wasn't enough, 'cause Jake hadn't just broken my heart. He tried to gaslight me, lie to me, embarrass me. And I wasn't about to let that go. So the next day, I got my film developed, TA's film. This was before smartphones, and I called the state office of Fish and Wildlife. I reported Jake's overcrowded breeding conditions, his refusal to file legal paperwork, the illegal exotic animals he was hiding in plain sight. They took me seriously. Very seriously. But that was just step one. Remember George and the other roommate? They were sick of Jake's narcissism too. And now that he was sleeping with a student, they filed complaints with the university alleging inappropriate relationship with an undergrad, academic favoritism conduct. Unbecoming of a teaching assistant, Jake had no idea what was coming. Meanwhile, George and I were out at the bars, making sure every woman in the program knew not to take a class with Jake. And the best part, I had emails. Written proof that Jake had admitted to sleeping with Meg. You know who I sent them to? Mary, Jake's advisor's wife. She was furious. Promised to tell her husband and make sure this never got swept under the rug. Let's just say that fire. A few weeks after my call to the state wildlife department, I got the call I'd been waiting for. It was George, practically giddy, his voice barely able to contain the excitement. "They're here. The state fish and wildlife officials had shown up at Jake's house. They had warrants, clipboards, and an entire checklist of violations. One by one, they inspected Jake's animals and began confiscating them. Not just the endangered one, not just the exotic illegal one, but nearly everything that wasn't guppies in a tank. Jake wasn't home at the time Meg was. She tried to talk her way out of it, said all the animals were Jake's, and as far as she knew, they were all legal. Which was hilarious because she just handed over written confirmation that Jake was solely responsible. George, he played it cool. Let them into the house. Showed them exactly where everything was. Even pointed out which animal could be seen. From the street, they stayed for hours, filed reports, took photos, seized tanks. By the time they left, they said they'd be back soon with a full warrant to search Jake's room. George and the other roommate. Fully cleared. Cooperative. Witnesses Jake. Radio silent. Meg had to drive to the university to find him and tell him what had happened. Because remember, this was the early 2000s. No smartphones, no emergency text alerts. Just one hell of a surprise waiting for him back home. Cut to the federal hammer drops, but I wasn't done. Not even close. Jake had just received a $30,000 EPA grant for animal research as part of his PhD. So I called the EPA. I asked, calmly and clearly, how would I go about reporting a federal grant recipient who is under investigation for harboring illegal and endangered animals? Long story short, his grant was revoked. Was ordered to repay what he'd used so far. Was permanently banned from applying for another federal grant. We're talking about a career-ending move. Research equals money. No grant, no research. No research, no PhD. He was done. The university followed close behind. Jake's teaching assistant position terminated. Effective immediately. His scholarship gone. And while somehow he managed to avoid being expelled, he was left scrambling. No grant, no TA job, and a pile of fines he couldn't afford. The fines plus animal confiscation, Jake was fined $15,000 by the state for his animal violations. And that wasn't the worst of it. All of his expensive breeding animals worth thousands of dollars were seized during the raid. The illegal exotic animal. It was handed over to a nearby nature center. One I ended up visiting over the years. Oh yeah, I used to stop by and say hello to that little guy. Quiet, poetic reminder of how karma actually works. And remember, the endangered animal, Jake, had refused to register because he didn't want the government in his business. It was safely rehomed with a proper permit. Far from Jake, the final blow exposing him to his inner circle at this point, his personal and professional life were in flames. But I wasn't finished. I emailed his sisters. I told them I've missed you. I didn't reach out because Jake broke up with me after calling me fat and cheating on me with a student. I figured it'd be weird. They were furious. Apparently, Jake had told them we'd broken up because of the long-distance thing. Classic Jake, cowardly and full of lies. So I sent them his own emails, the ones where he admitted to falling for Meg and accused me of not being smart enough. His sisters didn't hold back. They told him off, told Meg off, and stayed friends with me. When one of them got married, I even sent a wedding gift. Know what Jake said at the bridal shower? All my siblings are still friends with my ex, and none of them try to connect with my wife. One of the sisters just laughed and said, I don't make a habit of being friends with homewreckers. Mic drop. Closing this chapter for now, Jake's PhD. Gone. He begged his dad to fund one more year just to get a master's. He faded away from academia. Meg dropped out of science altogether and became an accountant. And me, I moved on. I found peace, but I never forgot. It's because deep down I knew there'd be one more chance to remind him of who I had become and who he chose to underestimate. End of part 3 next. 20 years later. The final twist. The job he almost got and the ultimate poetic revenge. Shall I roll straight into part 4? The final revenge twist that hits 20 years later? Ask ChatGPT said. Continue, ChatGPT said. Absolutely, here's the final chapter. Part 4 of your long-form YouTube revenge story script. This is where the story comes full circle, 20 years later, with a twist that hits like a freight train. Part 4, 20 years later, Karma delivers the final blow approx. Word count, approximately 850. Fast forward 2 decades. I built a good life. A fulfilling career helping scientists and doctors communicate their work to everyday people. I travel, I teach, I speak at universities and conferences. I even joke sometimes. Yeah, I work with a kind of geniuses who used to make me feel stupid in my 20s, but I'm happy. I'm whole. I'm long past Jake, at least. I thought I was. A few weeks ago, I was invited to guest lecture at a major university. 250 students in the audience, grad students, undergrads, faculty, and I'm standing at the front of the lecture hall, talking about science, communication, outreach, and public trust. The lecture goes great. Afterward, I'm mingling with students near the front of the stage when I hear a voice behind me. Hey, OP, long time no see. I turned around slowly. It was Jake. I kept my face completely neutral. No recognition, no reaction. I calmly said, sorry, I meet a lot of people. Have we crossed paths at a workshop or conference? He laughed, clearly a little shaken. It's me, Jake. I paused, squinted, and finally gasped lightly. Oh wow, Jake, I guess I blocked you out. Then I smiled politely. Well, lovely to see you. Take care. And I turned and walked away. He tried to go in for a hug. I didn't even acknowledge it that moment. That was already the win. But it gets better. That evening, I went out to dinner with a department chair and a few professors who had invited me to speak. Over wine and appetizers, someone said. So, Jake? I smiled, carefully. We knew each other. 20 years ago, they exchanged glances. Then the department head said, we're actually considering him for a teaching position. He's been here a few days observing classes. I couldn't stop myself. I scoffed a genuine, knee-jerk reaction. Everyone went silent. So I explained, sorry, just surprised he's teaching after what happened at University X. Their interest peaked. What happened? I gave them the bare minimum. But just enough. He was sleeping with a 19-year-old student when he was 26. He lost his scholarship, was fired as a TA, left with a lower degree. Oh, and there were complaints. The table went quiet again. Then the department head said, wow, we'll have to look into that, and that was that. A few days later, I got a call from Mary Jake's old advisor's wife. She's retired now, but still keeps in touch with her university colleagues. She sounded practically gleeful. Someone at the university called us. They were doing a background check on Jake. Turns out they pulled his old file. It still had the termination letter, the student complaint, reports, notes from the faculty investigation, and yes, the EPA grant loss and animal control. Violations Jake had managed to scrub his arrest record years ago, thanks to a good lawyer and a well-connected father. But university records? Those don't go away. If he wasn't getting that job, Jake will never know I was the one who quietly told the truth. He'll never know I was the one who made sure that file was reviewed. But I don't need him to know, because when I walked off that stage after lecturing in a university science department, while he sat in the audience trying to rewrite history, that was enough. The story came full circle. I didn't set out to destroy Jake's career. But when someone lies, cheats, manipulates, and tries to make you question your worth, sometimes you just help the universe along a little. And it's not about being petty. It's about standing up for the version of yourself that was gaslit, hurt, and left behind. It's about truth catching up, eventually, and if. I could leave one final message for every young woman or man listening. Right now, if someone makes you feel small so they can feel powerful, that is their flaw, not yours. And if you ever feel like karma's taking too long, just remember, the best revenge is living well and making sure the right people find the truth. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and leave a comment. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed?